Long time no see. This is YouTube Medical University. I have a quick question. Getting cancer. When you hear the term lifestyle habits, what comes to mind? If you thought of things like smoking or drinking too much alcohol, that's exactly right. I think that's how most people would answer. But what if the lifestyle habits you believe are healthy, or that you think have nothing to do with cancer risk, actually turned out to be risks? Wouldn't you regret it if you found out later? Recently, a woman in her 60s named Ms. A visited my clinic. Very health conscious, she often discussed her diet and exercise with me. However, Ms. A believed that drinking piping hot tea was healthy, though I don't know where she got that idea. She told me that as a treat after meals, she would enjoy sweet cakes or desserts with piping hot tea. When I asked her, doesn't drinking it that hot burn your mouth? She admitted that in the beginning, she often burned herself. In fact, it's an undeniable fact that drinking beverages hot enough to cause burns actually increases the risk of esophageal cancer. Miss A was surprised, saying, I thought it was good for my body and drank hot beverages to warm myself up. But that's not all. There's also the smoke from sizzling oil. Cooking in smoky, oily areas raises cancer risk for women. There are some surprising cancer links. There are actually lifestyle habits that are related to cancer. So by watching this video, you'll learn about these hidden cancer risks. And on the other hand, I'll introduce research showing that eating certain foods may actually lower your risk of cancer. Be sure to avoid these cancer risks. I'm sharing this so you can build a body less likely to get cancer. I hope you'll think, I can do this too. Please watch until the end if you're interested. And here at YouTube Medical University, we'll continue to share important information for your health. I'd be happy if you subscribe to the channel. So here's today's agenda. In the first period, I'll briefly introduce some interesting medical knowledge about why your everyday habits can increase your risk of cancer. And in the second period, I'll talk about some surprising habits that specialists warn can increase your risk of cancer. I'll introduce the top 5 worst habits that increase your cancer risk. Then, in the third period, I'll present 5 delicious foods that can help lower your risk of cancer. Listen until the end to live vibrantly in your later years. Now, for the first period, why do your everyday habits increase your risk of cancer? Please listen to this fundamental topic for a bit. If you understand this part, the following sections will be much easier to grasp. Our bodies are made up of as many as 37 trillion cells. These cells die and are replaced by new ones, like a factory constantly renewing itself. This cellular factory is at work every day, replacing old cells with new ones through a process called cell division. For example, imagine that there is a copier in this factory. This copier constantly copies the information of the cells and delivers it to the new cells. That's the image. But copiers can break, ink might smudge, or a color copy might not turn out as expected. It prints in black and white or jams, things like that. Copying mistakes like that actually happen in our bodies from time to time as well. When this becomes a serious problem, that's what we call cancer. For minor errors in the body, our bodies have a function to check for these mistakes. So basically, cells born from errors usually die off. They just disappear as if nothing happened, but sometimes, unfortunately, they survive. Unchecked cell multiplication is called cancer. In fact, it's said that about 5,000 cancer cells are born in our bodies every day. It's pretty scary, isn't it? However, these 5,000 cells are destroyed by the body's cancer checking mechanisms, so it's not like everyone develops cancer every day. That's why it doesn't happen. The human body is fascinating. Some people are more likely to develop cancer because their lifestyle habits increase the chance of certain copying errors. The more copying errors there are, the more likely it is that some of those cells will survive as cancer cells. When oil and debris build up in the kitchen drain, the water flow gradually gets worse, right? In the same way, when unhealthy habits accumulate in your body, more and more copying errors, like garbage, build up, causing damage to your cells and increasing your risk of cancer. Don't you think it's easier to understand when you think about it logically? And that's not all. Lack of sleep or a stressful lifestyle can wear out your immune system, which acts as your body's security force. When that happens, it can't patrol your body properly. It's said that this increases the risk of missing cancer cells. In other words, what I want to say here is that cancer doesn't happen because of one specific thing you did, but rather it develops over time as a result of your daily habits. So, while cancer may seem like a disaster that suddenly strikes one day, if I may be bold, it's partly a lifestyle-related disease. It ultimately develops as a risk accumulated from your daily lifestyle habits. Of course, there are people for whom this is not the case, but that aspect is quite significant. In other words, to put it the other way around, you can definitely lower your risk of cancer depending on your lifestyle habits, so I hope you'll listen to this video with confidence. Now then, what you've been waiting for. In the second part, we'll talk about the lifestyle habits that increase your risk of cancer. I'll introduce the top 5 worst habits, the 5 most surprising lifestyle habits that increase your risk of cancer. Here's the first one, being too thin. Some of you might think, isn't being overweight a bigger cancer risk? Of course, that's true as well. Being overweight actually increases the risk of breast cancer, but in fact, being too thin also increases your risk of cancer. An interesting research report has come out. According to a study by the National Cancer Center, Japanese men with a body mass index of 21 or lower had a higher rate of cancer-related deaths compared to Japanese men with an average body mass index of 23 to 25. What you should know here is that it's not clear whether being thin makes you more likely to get cancer, but being too thin can lower your immune strength, which can lead to cancer-related. It's believed that this may be why the mortality rate is higher. In fact, you might notice that people around you who are too thin tend to catch colds more easily. After getting sick, they often still feel unwell. Do you know anyone like that? Some people eat less and exercise excessively, becoming too thin. Do you know anyone like that? It's good to watch your weight, but staying in a healthy range is important. To keep your strength, especially if you get cancer, try to keep your body mass index above 21. To calculate body mass index, divide your weight by your height twice using meters. For example, if you're 150 centimeters tall, that's 1.5 meters. Be careful with the calculation. One surprising lifestyle habit that raises cancer risk is cooking with poor ventilation, especially when stir frying or deep frying. Many people may not know this. I especially want women who cook every day to hear this. The smoke that comes from oil during cooking, it's that slightly dark smoke, has been shown to increase cancer risk in women, even for non-smokers who don't smoke at all. Multiple studies have noted this. A highly reliable meta-analysis from China, which compiles data from several studies, found that cooking without a ventilation fan, non-smoking women who don't use a ventilation fan while cooking have about 2.1 times higher cancer risk than those who do. Isn't this surprising? Why is smoke so harmful? When oil is heated at high temperatures, the fumes that come out actually contain things like particulate matter 2.5 and PAH, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. They contain harmful substances, including carcinogens. So, by inhaling this every day, it increases the risk of lung cancer. It's not just a matter of using an induction stove or anything like that. The problem is inhaling the oil itself. That's why it's important to cook under a proper ventilation fan. It's important not to inhale smoke directly by ensuring good airflow. In some restaurants, like certain Chinese places that use high temperature oil and produce black smoke, poor ventilation can raise cancer risk. So checking for proper ventilation is important to protect your health. That might be important. If you didn't know or were surprised, give a thumbs up or subscribe. I'd appreciate it if you did. The third of the top 5 surprising lifestyle habits that raise your cancer risk. It's getting sunburned by accident. Everyone gets sunburned in the summer, right? I myself often get sunburned because I go for walks. Many people work hard to protect themselves from the sun in the summer, but I think a lot of people tend to neglect it in the spring or fall. Actually, getting too much sunburn like this also increases your risk of cancer. This lifestyle habit raises your risk, especially due to sunburn. Sudden intense sun exposure can cause severe sunburn, turning skin bright red or even causing blisters. These burns are especially dangerous. A study found that people who have had severe blistering sunburns over 5 times in their lives face a much higher risk of the most malignant type of skin cancer than those who haven't. The risk of developing melanoma, a type of skin cancer, is about twice as high. Reports say the risk doubles after just 5 times. That's a major risk, right? When you were a kid, did you ever go to the pool without putting on any sunscreen and then your skin peeled badly the next day? That kind of severe sunburn is dangerous. Why does the risk of skin cancer increase? If you listen to the first lecture, it should be easy to understand. When you get sunburned, your skin peels and has to rapidly create new skin as a kind of emergency repair, right? It's said that sunlight itself can damage your DNA, so when the skin barrier is broken, the sunlight damages the DNA. Then, in a rush, the DNA copies itself to make new cells. It's believed that this process makes it easier for cancer cells to form. Don't think that just because you're older, you don't need to worry about sun protection. Regardless of age, especially on days with strong sunlight, make sure to always use sunscreen. On the other hand, getting an appropriate amount of sun exposure is also very important. The reason is because when we are exposed to sunlight, our skin synthesizes vitamin D. So it's important to get an appropriate amount of sun while also preventing sunburns that are severe enough to cause burns. How much sunlight should you get and how much vitamin D? The top 5 surprising worst lifestyle habits. Number 4, eating very hot food. I mentioned this earlier. Eating very hot food or drinks can burn your mucous membranes, much like a sunburn. By understanding the reasons, you can better judge if a lifestyle habit may raise cancer risk or if certain information is questionable, making it easier to evaluate information yourself. At YouTube Medical University, we explain things and their reasons even when it's hard. In today's information society, misinformation is spreading quickly. I don't want you to regret trusting false information. Let's enjoy learning together and understand the reasons behind things. Hot tea or soup? Blowing on hot tea or soup to cool it before drinking is enjoyable. However, as mentioned earlier, regularly drinking beverages over 65 degrees Celsius, there is data showing that the risk of esophageal cancer nearly doubles, and organizations like the World Health Organization and the International Agency for Research on Cancer is also raising concerns. Do you know how hot 65 degrees Celsius is? A good way to estimate, think of those hot canned drinks in vending machines beside the cold ones. You know those, right? When you grab one, it's said that they're about 65 degrees Celsius. If you let it cool down a bit before drinking, that's fine. But if you drink it while it's still that hot, it could increase your risk of esophageal cancer. You already understand why that's dangerous, right? Hot drinks can burn your esophagus. When you get a burn, the DNA, which is the blueprint of your cells, can get damaged, and as your body rushes to repair the cells, mistakes can happen in the copying process, making it easier for cancer cells to form. So even if you think drinking hot water is good for your health, please be careful not to drink it when it's too hot. If it's just a little warm, that's fine. But if you're drinking it piping hot, it might actually be having a negative impact on your health, so please be careful. It increases the risk of cancer. The top 5 most surprisingly bad lifestyle habits. Number 5 is this: ultra-processed foods. Have you ever heard of ultra-processed foods? Recently, we've been covering this topic many times at the YouTube Medical University. That's how important it is. So what are ultra-processed foods? In short, they're industrially manufactured foods packed with preservatives, colorings, artificial sweeteners, and all sorts of additives. They're artificial foods, specifically things like sweet breads, sugary cereals, instant noodles, sausages and ham, soft drinks, sweet juices, snack foods, and mass-produced ice cream. Some of you might be thinking, if you list this many things, what am I supposed to eat? But unfortunately, this is the reality. You don't have to quit everything, but maybe try cutting out just one of them. I think it's important to try choosing something different today, or to make small changes little by little. For example, if you're busy, like I used to be, it's easy to end up eating sweet bread for breakfast and instant noodles for lunch. If quitting both is difficult, have sweet bread for breakfast, but bring a simple homemade lunch. Try changing just one habit. What's dangerous about these ultra-processed foods? Well, according to a study conducted in France, it was a large-scale study and they looked at about 100,000 people. The results showed that for every 10% increase in the proportion of ultra-processed foods in their daily diet, the risk of all types of cancer increased by about 12%. Just a 10% increase in ultra-processed foods, that's all it takes. To put it in perspective, if you simply switch the water you drink at breakfast to juice, that alone can increase your intake of ultra-processed foods by about 10%. You can see how dangerous this is. Now, about these ultra-processed foods, if you ask what's so bad about them, the truth is, it's not just one thing. The real danger of ultra-processed foods is that, as a combination, they increase your overall risk of cancer. These are the traits of ultra-processed foods. First, they are low in nutritional value, but high in calories, making it easy to become overweight. Second, the many food additives can disrupt the balance of gut bacteria, which can lead to chronic inflammation throughout the body. Third, there is a high possibility that carcinogenic substances are produced during the high-temperature manufacturing process. Of course, not all ultra-processed foods fit every one of these points, so some may apply while others do not. However, it is believed that these factors together increase the overall risk of cancer, so things like instant noodles, sweetbreads, and sugary drinks, convenient and tasty foods are considered ultra-processed foods. So just keep in mind that behind that convenience, there might be significant risks hidden. I hope you can keep that in mind. After covering some scary topics in the second period, we'll switch to something more positive and exciting in the third to lift everyone's spirits. I'll be talking about that. It's said to scientifically boost your resistance to cancer. There are actually foods like that. Today, along with some fascinating research, I'll talk about foods that may help lower your risk of cancer. I'll introduce 5 foods that can help lower your risk of cancer. 5 foods that reduce your risk of cancer. The first one is this. Coffee. First, coffee, which many people drink, is said to possibly lower the risk of a certain type of cancer. What kind of cancer is that? There are reports that it may lower the risk of liver cancer. Some of you might think that coffee has a bad image for your health, right? But according to a highly reliable study that gathered large-scale meta-analyses, drinking 2 cups of coffee a day resulted in about a 27% reduction in the risk of liver cancer. Why does coffee lower the risk of liver cancer? If you also think about the reason, it's easier to remember. Coffee has substances such as caffeine and chlorogenic acid. Some of the polyphenols, like those found in coffee, help prevent fat from accumulating in the liver. Just having fat in the liver can actually cause inflammation, but these substances help prevent that inflammation. So as I mentioned earlier, if inflammation doesn't occur, DNA is less likely to be damaged and there's less need to repeatedly repair damaged cells, which is why it's believed that the risk of cancer goes down. In other words, it becomes harder for fat to build up in the liver. In that sense, it's said to have a very positive effect on fatty liver as well. However, of course, you should be careful not to consume too much caffeine. Personally, I try to keep it to about 3 or 4 cups a day at most. I recommend that, but caffeine can cause a racing heart or jitters for some. If you have a heart condition, see a psychiatrist, or are pregnant, consult your doctor to determine how many cups are safe. It's said 1 in 3 Japanese people has fatty liver, which raises liver cancer risk. I've previously discussed the lifestyle habits that help improve fatty liver. I posted a video about this. Check the description if you're interested. Lowering cancer risk. 5 recommended foods. The second, soy products. Japanese culture is closely tied to soybeans. Think tofu and miso. Soybeans are used in many foods and have positive health effects. Here's some good news for women. It's said that soy isoflavones may actually lower the risk of breast cancer. A study conducted on Asian people. In the study, it was said that the group with the highest intake of isoflavones had up to about a 29% lower risk of breast cancer compared to the group with the lowest intake. Those who have studied well, do you know why isoflavones benefit breast cancer? Actually, this female hormone called estrogen and soy isoflavones have similar structures, so it's said that they have similar effects. Therefore, when women consume soy isoflavones, the isoflavones attach to the receptors where estrogen would normally bind. In other words, as women's hormones decrease, soy isoflavones fit into the receptors, blocking the bad signals that would cause cancer cells to grow. This is how it's believed to work. As for how much you should eat in a day, the general guideline is about 20 milligrams of isoflavones per day. That's about half a block of tofu or 1 pack of natto, so it's not a large amount. Why not try to make a habit of eating 1 block of tofu or 1 pack of natto a day? Actually, that's not all. The period called menopause, when women's hormones start to decrease, usually comes around their 40s to 50s on average. And with menopause, you might sweat, have shaky hands or feet, or feel irritable. Soy isoflavones are said to help with these symptoms. Research reports support this. Please be mindful. I've shared videos on menopause before. Check them out if interested. Reduce the risk of cancer. 5 recommended foods. Number 3, whole grains and dietary fiber. I may have repeated this on YouTube Medical University so much that you're tired of it. Whole grains are the grains we typically eat. You can add them by making simple changes to rice or bread, like using barley, brown rice, oatmeal, or whole wheat bread. According to a report by the World Cancer Research Fund, consuming 90 grams of whole grains per day, this is 90 grams in a dry state, can lower the risk of colon cancer by about 17%. Whole grains are rich in dietary fiber, and after you eat them, they serve as food for the bacteria in your gut. That's how they work. This helps improve your gut environment and relieves constipation, which is believed to lower the risk of colon cancer. This is also a review of what we covered in the first and second periods, but if your gut environment is poor and you have chronic inflammation, inflammation can occur in your intestines. DNA damage and increased cell division raise cancer risk. Maintaining a healthy gut lowers inflammation and reduces colon cancer risk. If you're wondering how much 90 grams of whole grains per day is, it's about 2 bowls of brown rice. I think many people might be hesitant to suddenly switch entirely to brown rice, so you could try replacing a third of your white rice with brown rice. That much shouldn't be a problem for most people. My recommendation is glutinous barley. Compared to brown rice, glutinous barley contains more soluble fiber, which makes it a better food source for your gut. And the total amount of dietary fiber is also much higher than brown rice. Plus, it has a pleasantly chewy texture. I think it's easy to eat, so if possible, please give glutinous barley a try. It helps lower the risk of cancer. Top 5 foods. Fourth, cruciferous vegetables. If you're unsure what these are, it's simple. Broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, and daikon radish are all cruciferous vegetables. In fact, these vegetables have drawn a lot of attention lately. Eating these cruciferous vegetables 5 times a week, compared to those who ate them least, it may help lower the risk of colon and lung cancer, and several other cancers by about 23% on average. This is still being researched, so we can't confirm that eating broccoli lowers cancer risk, but broccoli, cabbage, and daikon radish are all very rich in dietary fiber, and especially broccoli is one of the plants that is high in protein. This nutrient-rich plant is high in protein. I hope you'll add it to your diet. What's so good about cruciferous vegetables? Actually, it's this compound called sulforaphane that's getting a lot of attention. This compound, sulforaphane, it's kind of a tongue twister of a name, but it's something that's naturally present in our bodies. It's said that sulforaphane might turn on the switch for detoxifying enzymes that break down toxins in our bodies. In other words, sulforaphane is believed to help detoxify carcinogenic substances that we might be taking in without even realizing it. Sulforaphane is pretty amazing, isn't it? There is something you need to be careful about. Sulforaphane is a bit sensitive to heat, so even if you cook it, make sure to do it quickly and avoid overcooking. If you chop it up finely and just lightly boil it in soup, for example, you'll be able to take in sulforaphane without destroying it. Raw daikon radish or cabbage are great in salads. What are your favorite ways to eat them? Here are 5 cancer-fighting foods. The 5th is nuts. At YouTube Medical University, we always mention nuts. When you're hungry, choose nuts. A highly reliable study found that people who ate 20 grams of nuts like almonds or walnuts daily had about a 10% lower overall cancer risk than those who didn't. The risk was especially reduced for digestive system cancers such as colon and pancreatic cancer. Nuts are beneficial due to their anti-inflammatory effects, which lower cell damage and reduce errors in cell replication. Their unsaturated fatty acids, vitamin E, and polyphenols provide these anti-inflammatory benefits. They contain a lot of these substances. Plus, nuts are low in carbohydrates and high in dietary fiber. So when you want a snack, munching on nuts is filling and highly recommended. If possible, I try to eat unsalted, dry roasted nuts that haven't been cooked in oil. If you're thinking about lowering your cancer risk, try to consume about a handful or roughly 20 grams per day. What do you think? Ways to increase your cancer risk? I've shared the 5 worst lifestyle habits and 5 foods that may help reduce cancer risk. I never thought such things. No, I didn't realize my habits raised my cancer risk. Cancer truly is a lifestyle related disease. I'm truly happy if my message got across, as I said in the second half of the video. Do you remember the 5 dietary points? Please make sure to take notes or listen to them repeatedly until you remember. Also, feel free to use the comment section as your memo. Leave a comment about something that surprised you, or even just a single word. It will help you remember better. I think it will help others learn too. I'd love for us to learn together at YouTube Medical University. Your likes and comments motivate me, so please leave a kind comment if you can. I look forward to hearing from you. And here at YouTube Medical University, we share knowledge on how to prevent cancer and other illnesses. In a world full of information, I think it's important to have at least one reliable source. I'd be really happy if you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. See you in the next video. As a general practitioner, my patients taught me how to live agelessly, even in your 70s. I want to do the same. I hadn't realized this was possible. These stories share lessons I've learned from many patients. Chatting with friends matters more than exercise. In medicine, less is more. I learned these lessons from my seniors. It offers wisdom for living healthily and happily at any age. Check the description below. Thank you for watching.